Chapter 17. Poor Ale and a Fine Bear. Evercloud tried to keep his head down as he walked into the village. It was just about midday, and the streets of Hendrick were full of people tending to their daily business. Evercloud had never seen so many humans before. He felt alien, even though these people looked just like he did. The way they dressed, the way they walked, even their smell seemed so exotic. Before he knew what he was doing, he began gawking at people as they passed him.
"What you looking at?"
a man said. "Sorry," Evercloud muttered, unaware he had been staring. He kept his attention to the path in front of him and quickly walked away. "They're going to figure you out," Evercloud thought. He vowed to keep to himself until he reached the village authorities. But it wasn't long before his senses and curiosities betrayed him again. A woman with long blonde hair and a violet dress came toward him, and Evercloud noticed she smelled of the most wonderful fragrance. He turned his head as she passed and sniffed her, intoxicated by her scent. "How rude!" the woman said, and slapped Evercloud across the face. The villagers pointed and laughed at Evercloud. His face turned red, and he shuffled away from the scene as quickly as he could. The slap was enough to remind him to mind his business, and it wasn't long before his renewed focus brought him to a village officer. The man stood outside the bakery, looking at the crowds and doing what he could to seem important. He reminded Evercloud of the castle guards back on Grey Mountain. The man was tall and round, with a funny little growth of hair on his upper lip. "Excuse me, sir," Evercloud said. The officer squinted his eyes and twitched his mustache.
"Yes, what is it?"
"Sir," Evercloud said, "I was traveling this morning from Yorbrook when I was ambushed by a group of bandits just outside of your village. They stole everything I had, except for my clothes."
"Yorbrook, eh?"
the officer said, and squinted a bit more.
"Well, that explains why I don't recognize you. What's your name, lad?"
Evercloud searched his mind for a name. He'd forgotten to come up with one. What is a man name? He thought. Then he remembered the game he and Riverpaw played so often. John Ball was named for a man. "John," Evercloud said, beginning to sweat a little. "My name is John. I'm from Yorbrook." "And your last name?" the officer said, and tilted his head. Last name? Evercloud thought. What's a last name? Evercloud was panicked, and blurted the first thing he could think of. "Ball." "Did you say Ball?" "John Ball," the officer asked. Evercloud's head shrank back into his shoulders, and he tentatively answered, "Yes?"
"Well, why didn't you say so?" The man laughed and patted Evercloud on the shoulder. "I didn't know George had a boy. How is old George doing these days?"
"He's well?" Evercloud said.
"He won't be too happy to hear you've been robbed by bandits, now will he?" the officer asked.
"No, sir," Evercloud replied.
"Well, don't you worry, John," the man said, hefting up his girth. "We'll get those bandits. How many did you say there were?"
10, Evercloud guessed, trying to choose a number that would get all the officers out of the village.
10, you say? The officer's eyes grew wide. "Well, this is serious. You've done a good job coming to get me, boy. It'll take all the officers to get this job done. You stop by the jailhouse later and we'll have 'em. You'll see."
"Thank you, sir," Evercloud said, and with a final twitch of the mustache, the hefty man waddled away faster than Evercloud thought possible. The young man smiled. He couldn't believe his luck. John Ball, he thought. Wait till Riverpaw hears this. Evercloud continued through the village and tried to find a tavern. He felt a bit more confident after having successfully tricked the officer. Soon he came across Hendrick Tavern and continued to celebrate his luck. He walked inside and looked around at the dingy place. He wondered why anyone would want to come into such a morose establishment on such a nice day. There were a few groups of people sitting at tables, but Evercloud thought it might be difficult to engage them in conversation. Then he noticed a bar where a few men were seated alongside each other. They seemed friendly and were already in conversation with the barkeeper. Evercloud thought this looked like a good opportunity. He walked to the bar and took a seat to the left of the men. Then the barkeeper stopped the conversation and came over to Evercloud. "What'll it be?" "I'll have an ale, please," Evercloud said. Ain't you a bit young for ale? The barkeeper asked. I'm served ale all the time, Evercloud responded, forgetting where he was. Oh, really? The barkeeper said. That's funny, 'cause I ain't seen you in here before. Now all the men at the bar had turned to look at Evercloud. He looked back at them and realized he might be too young to drink ale by human standards. Well, that's because I haven't been here before, Evercloud said, trying to recover from his slip. I meant that they served me in Yorbrook. My name is John Ball. From Yorbrook, eh? Said a man with a red beard 2 seats down from Evercloud. I got a sister in Yorbrook. Then the man turned to the barkeeper. Give him an ale, Gene. It ain't gonna hurt him. The barkeeper shrugged and turned to the tap. He poured Evercloud a mug of ale and placed it down in front of him. That'll be 3 gold pieces, young man, the barkeeper said. Evercloud thanked him and handed over the money. So, the man with the red beard continued, tell us news of Yorbrook, my boy. How goes it there? Evercloud took a sip of the ale and struggled to stop himself from spitting it out. That's horrible, he thought. Bear ale is much finer than this. Evercloud swallowed and answered the man. All is well in Yorbrook, he said, nodding. Nothing of any excitement to speak of. Although, Evercloud saw this as his first opportunity. There have been rumors of a return of the ancients. Have there been such rumors here in Hendrick? The tavern went dead silent, and all of its patrons now had their eyes locked on Evercloud. His stomach twisted, and he wondered if it were the ale. The man with the red beard pushed his stool away from the bar and stood up. He walked over to Evercloud and put a heavy hand upon his shoulder. Evercloud looked up at the man, who now had a very stern look upon his face. I highly doubt, the man said with an edge to his voice, that anyone in Yorbrook talks about ancients, and I can guarantee that no good person in this village does so either. So, friend from Yorbrook, why don't you just tell us who you really are, and what unholy place it is that you come from? Evercloud desperately wished Whiteclaw and Riverpaw were with him. He slowly moved his hand down his side and felt the golden claw he had concealed inside his baggy trousers. He knew that revealing the claw would bring an end to his time in the village, but he wasn't sure he was going to have a choice. There he is, came a voice from across the tavern. I told you waiting at the tavern was a good idea, came another. 2 men walked over to Evercloud and stood directly between him and the red-bearded man. The first man was tall and thin, with dark eyes and an olive complexion. He placed a hand on Evercloud's shoulder. There you are, cousin, he said. Been drinking again, have we? The other man asked as he put a hand on Evercloud's other shoulder. This man had the same complexion as his partner. In fact, they looked like brothers. However, this man was short, with longer hair and more handsome features. He turned to the red-bearded man with a smile. This one says some funny things when he drinks, doesn't he? Very creative imagination, the tall man added. Well, we better get you back to Uncle, he said to Evercloud. Don't want him to get angry. Scary man when he's angry, the short man said, shaking his head at the red-bearded man. And with that, the 2 men grabbed Evercloud and ushered him out of the tavern. Who are you? Evercloud asked, once they were outside the tavern. Keep your mouth shut and keep walking, the tall man said, as he and the short man continued to escort Evercloud down the busy street. The man with the red beard burst out of the tavern and hollered after them as they walked away. I don't want to see him back here again. Yes, sir, the short man called brightly. Have a lovely day. Then he muttered under his breath, Ugly bastard. After walking quite a distance from the tavern, the men turned Evercloud down a narrow alley and then pulled him through a door at the back. It led to a dark room with no windows and only a single candle for light. Then the men thrust Evercloud down in a chair and folded their arms. All right, the tall man said. Who are you and why are you here? My name is John Ball, and I'm from Yorbrook, Evercloud started. Don't play with me, the tall man shouted and pointed his finger. Do you think we're stupid? Your pants don't fit, you've recently shaved your head, and you strike up conversation with strangers about things that could get a man killed. Another 10 minutes, and they would have had you up on the stake as a heretic. Now, I'll only ask you one more time. Who are you? Evercloud didn't know what to do. These men had helped him out of a precarious situation, but how could he be sure he could really trust them? What would Whiteclaw do? He wondered. Well, the short man said, we're waiting. How do I know I can trust you? Evercloud asked. We just saved your life, the tall man said. It was true. These men didn't know Evercloud, and they had helped him. Besides, there wasn't much alternative unless Evercloud wanted to fight them. My name is Evercloud, the young man said, and I'm from the kingdom on Grey Mountain. You think this is funny, don't you? The short man was becoming irritated. He stepped forward in the dim candlelight, and Evercloud saw a large knife held in his hand. This is not a game. Evercloud was scared. He again placed his hand upon the claw hidden in his trousers and prepared for whatever he might have to do. Please, he said, I'm not lying, I swear it. I come from the kingdom on Grey Mountain. There is no kingdom on Grey Mountain, the short man yelled. There is, Evercloud pleaded, the kingdom of bears. You come from a kingdom of bears, the tall man chuckled as he turned to his partner. Maybe this one is a drunkard. I'm not drunk, Evercloud yelled. I was abandoned in the forests around Grey Mountain when I was a small child. The bears took me in and raised me as their own. I'm now on a quest with my uncle and cousin to find the ancients and stop the great tyrant. The short man paused and looked at Evercloud with a genuine curiosity. Where did you learn of the ancients and the great tyrant? He asked. My family told me of them, Evercloud said, just recently. So when you say your family, uncle and cousin, you mean bears? The tall man asked. Yes, Evercloud said defiantly. They are my family. The short man shook his head and turned to his partner, who merely shrugged. Okay, the short man said. You say your uncle and cousin, who are bears, are on this quest with you. Then where are they? They're waiting for me outside of the village, Evercloud said. If that's true, the tall man said, then you will take us to them. 20 armored men walked out of the village of Hendrik with spears and wooden shields. They marched 2 by 2 as their leader called out cadence, and looked better trained to put on a show than to fight. Whiteclaw and Riverpaw stayed low to the ground behind a thicket as the officers paraded past. You remember the plan? Whiteclaw whispered. Yes, father, Riverpaw replied. We only want to keep them occupied, Whiteclaw said. Do not kill unless it is absolutely necessary. Do you understand me? Riverpaw did not answer. Riverpaw, do you understand me? Whiteclaw repeated. Yes, father, Riverpaw said. All right, Whiteclaw said. On my mark, make the first pass. Whiteclaw lifted his arm and Riverpaw prepared to run. The young bear could feel his muscles tense in anger. He could not so easily forget what men had done to his father. His anger boiled and fueled him with determination. He clenched his teeth and waited. Then Whiteclaw dropped his arm, and Riverpaw was off. He circled and came at the men from behind. The officers never heard the bear coming. Riverpaw barreled through and knocked 6 men to the ground. Before the men knew what had hit them, Riverpaw had already retreated to a safe distance. A booming roar sounded, and the officers turned to see Whiteclaw standing before them. The men were caught between the bears. They quickly formed a tight circle and raised their spears. All right, men, yelled a large man with a twitching mustache. Grip those spears tightly and prepare to defend yourselves. Whiteclaw let out another roar, and the bears circled the men. Hold tight, the mustached man yelled. They're preparing to charge. But they were not. The bears only intended to circle the men, remaining to them as moving targets and keeping them guessing as to what would come next. The game continued this way for an hour before one of the officers spoke up. Sir, the man said, I don't believe the bears are going to charge. The officer with the twitching mustache rolled his eyes. Stellar work. Your powers of observation are an unbelievable asset. What should we do now, sir? Another man asked. Do nothing, the man with the mustache said. Allow them to make the first move.
We have the advantage.
What if they're waiting for other bears, sir? Yet another officer asked. The mustached man hadn't thought of that. Was that possible? Could bears be that intelligent? The odds were well in their favor now, 10 men to each bear. Could they afford to wait and potentially lose that advantage? He would have to make the first move.
All right, men, he said. Keep formation and move slowly toward the village.
With that, Whiteclaw knew it was time for phase 2. He reared up on his hind legs and roared into the air twice. Riverpaw took the cue, and then he and Whiteclaw ran from their positions back to the trees.
Stay the course, the mustached man called. They may return.
And return they did. The bears came running with a felled tree balanced on the back of their necks, and then they dropped it almost 10 yards from the men. Together they lifted it again and heaved it at the men. The officers were stunned as the tree knocked them to the ground. Then, without hesitation, the bears were upon them, intent on destroying their weapons. Not an entire minute passed, and every spear lay shattered on the ground. The men scrambled, confused and afraid, until they finally huddled together again with only shields to protect them. They looked at the bears roughly 20 yards from them and wondered why they didn't attack.
What is happening?
An officer whispered to the man with the mustache.
I don't know. Just give me some time,
he said as his beady eyes darted from one bear to the other. Time was exactly what the bears wanted, and it continued to pass as they stood in a standoff. Soon the sun turned a vibrant orange as it headed for the horizon.
We've almost finished, Whiteclaw thought. This was easy.
But the man with the mustache had been thinking, and as he watched the sun set, a panic had come over him. These were not normal bears. Maybe they weren't bears at all. Maybe they were witches disguised as bears. What did they want? Why had they destroyed the weapons and nothing else? Soon it would be dark. Were the bears waiting for dark? The man couldn't take the paranoia any longer. He picked up a broken spear and screamed. Then his men watched in horror as he charged the bears. But Riverpaw knocked the man to the ground, quickly pinning him under one giant paw.
Riverpaw, it's time to go,
Whiteclaw said. Riverpaw didn't respond. He lowered his head and gnashed his teeth as the man screamed in terror.
Riverpaw,
Whiteclaw yelled.
Why is the bear talking?
The mustache man whimpered. Riverpaw removed his paw after one final snarl and then joined his father. The bears ran along the stream, leaving the men to wonder for the rest of their lives what in the world had happened to them.
I thought you were going to kill that man, Whiteclaw said as he and Riverpaw ran.
I won't become the monster they think I am, Riverpaw said. Whiteclaw grinned.
You're going to be a fine bear, Riverpaw.